Hello, welcome to yesterday's airlines. I only just did the May JC Wings announcements, but I'm getting to it faster this month. We are here now with this video for the June announcements, which were announced probably about a week ago or so. I've been pretty harsh on JC Wings this year. Don't think they're really living up to their potential. Having said that, I think this month is probably better than last. And for European collectors, there is at least a reasonable range of European aircraft, because I know that a lot of Euro collectors are a bit annoyed, to put it politely, with NG models and even Gemini in terms of what they're producing from a European perspective. Then again, obviously the juxtaposition is that JC may be making more European material, but it's not always necessarily the best results that they're getting because of the molds they're using. So you have to weigh these things up. But I do think there is a better selection here for European collectors, and there is some stuff of interest. There's also some other, passable models around, a couple of which may even scoot high up my rankings into supersonic. So stay tuned for that. But before I get into that, obviously subscribe to the channel and chuck a like on the video. Thanks very much, everyone, for watching. Follow me on Instagram at YesterdayAirlines and check out yesterdaysairlines.com, where I do a lot of content. So from collection pictures to mold reviews to detailed model reviews to aviation history, there's a huge amount on there. Check that out. Okay, but let's get on and see what JC has for us in the month of June. Though, obviously, none of it is going to be actually at retailers for June. We'll probably get there probably in September or so. But nonetheless, let's see what they are going to thrill us with. So if you include all of the releases here, then you come up with 27 models. But if you cut out the flaps down versions and just treat those, the flaps up and flaps down variants, as a single model, which I'll do for this release ranking video, then you come up with 23. So still a reasonably healthy batch of models, the majority of which, as always, are Airbus and Boeing. And we start with the Airbuses, of which there are 7. First up, we have another EasyJet A320. Another Neo as well, I believe. Is it a Neo? Actually, this one could just be a CEO. I think actually is a CEO, isn't it? And they've made a few of these recently. This one is registered G Echo Zulu Oscar Lima. It is the 250th Airbus for EasyJet, presumably. That's what the titles mean on this. They recently did make a Neo, which was UZHA, and they've made previously EZUH, which is a standard A320, not a Neo. And they've all had various special schemes on them. Now, there was recently, or there will be soon, an art exclusive called Orange Box Models, which is an A320 214 with the Sharklets. Different registration, doesn't have the 250 on it, but obviously that's going to be a much better model because it's a much better mold than this one. But nonetheless, I'm sure that there will be a decent sized market for this, because there's obviously not been a huge amount of these coming out. And actually looking back at it, it does look like Panda Models did actually make this exact registration in the past. So it has been made, it just isn't very easy to get hold of. I'm just going to put this one up into Workhorse, I think, because the mold doesn't thrill me, and yeah, it's compared to the Panda, it's not as good. Next up, we've got something which is unique and quite nice to see. I always like to see fresh selections from manufacturers. This one is an A321. It's a passenger to freighter conversion. It is in the colours of Yamato Transport, which is a new domestic cargo airline in Japan that is being run by Spring Japan, which is one of JAL's low-cost units. They've got a trio of these A321s. I think they only started services in April, so not long ago at all. This one is registered JA81 Yankee Alpha, so I suspect that is the first of three. And it's quite a nice livery, actually. It's got this kind of this cat logo on it, which is, I guess, kind of classic Japanese in its terms of its it's slightly cartoony, but it actually looks pretty cool. Is it a cat carrying a kitten? Actually, I think it's a cat carrying a kitten, isn't it? The main logo here, but I actually quite like it. It's got this silver fuselage on it as well, and the model, even though the A320 mold is not spectacular, it actually turned out pretty nicely, and I think this one's actually not too bad. I'm going to put this one up into high flyer. I think that it's unique, it's kind of funky, and the A320 mold, yeah, it's not dreadful. When it's got the IAAs on it anyway. It's worse when it's got CFMs or the Neo engines. Next up is a Condor A321. We've been seeing a lot of Condor releases recently thanks to the new scheme, the love it or hate it Marmite colours. This one is the AIAC. It has got the green variant of the livery on it, so it's one that we've seen already recently from NG models. They produce exactly the same. In fact, they produced all of them, I think. They made it last year. So I'm surprised if you haven't already got it. Phoenix has also made it in the past, not as well. So this is the third version of this. I imagine, again, this was made quite a while ago and it's just been slipped out. They released the red version just recently, so they've probably got the others coming too. It's effectively too late to be a high flyer, I think, so I'm just going to put this one in to workhorse. The last A321 is a Neo, so it comes with the giant engines. It's in the colours of Scoot, which is an airline I don't really like. And they've also already made this before. They made 9VNCA, and this one is 9VNCB. So it's effectively a re-release of a model which didn't look very good the first time round. In fact, the pictures I see of the original illustrate the knuckle-dragging aspect of the oversized engines. Yeah, I'm not appreciating this one. The mold sucks, really, when it's got the Neo engines on it, and I don't like the airline. It's been released before. I'm going to relegate this one down to gas guzzler. Into the wide bodies, and we have another unique entry, so that generally is a good thing. And this one is in the colours of the Spanish-Portuguese carrier Iberojet, which is a charter airline. And this is an A330-900, so it's a Neo. CSTKH is the registration. And Iberojet's colours are kind of modern and a bit basic. They're not, again, much like a lot of Spanish airlines, they don't really take advantage of the vibrant colours of the peninsula of Iberia here. It's just the Iberian Peninsula, it's not Iberia the airline. Yeah, and it's a pretty bland scheme, but it is unique in the sense that no one else has made it, and the JC Wings A339 is passably decent, probably not up to the standards of the very latest moulds of the type, but decent, well worth collecting. The pictures of the model look pretty good, though I do think there's something going on perhaps with the nose gear on this sample picture. It looks incredibly high. But, yeah, I'm liking it. I think it'll be a decent release, and I'm going to put this one up in high flyer for its uniqueness primarily. Two more Airbuses to go, and the next one is not very exciting. It's a Kuwaiti government A340-500. They made one of these not long ago. They made GBA. This one's GBB. Did we need another one? Probably not, but I assume it was just splitting the batch. Also problematic is that the sheet lines on these Kuwaiti A340s are all over the place, and they kind of dip down at the front. It doesn't look very well put together from a print perspective. Actually, it's tempting to gas guzzle this. The mould isn't particularly good either. I'm just going to put... I'll put in a workhorse, but I'm charitable. The mould is nowhere near as good as the Phoenix mould. They seem to have bodged the livery application, and they made it before, so not a great release. The last Airbus is a better release, and that is a Singapore Airlines A350-900 9V SJF. Now, there's been a lot of people crying out for more Singapore, so they might be happy if they're willing to go with a JC Wings release. But having said that, they have recently had a Singapore A350 release announced by Panda Models on their new mould, which presumably will be better than the JC Wings one. Having said that, the JC Wings one isn't dreadful, and I think they've got the new wing lit shape on it too. So yeah, it's not going to be a dreadful model by any means. There's probably quite a strong demand for it. It comes up in flaps up and down. I might even put this one up into high flyer. Perhaps that's being a bit generous. Probably is, but I think I shall. And that takes us out of the Airbuses and into a quite large selection of Boeings, many of which are really not rocking my world too much. We begin with a 737-200. Sounds good, except it's another re-release. This is another Dragonair. We've already had a Dragonair release from JC Wings not that long ago. This one's VRH Yankee Lima. The previous one was VRH Kilo Papa. The model looks okay. The 200 mold from Gemini has serious shortcomings as a modern mold, but they put aerials on it and they look decent. I mean, the pictures here, it doesn't look great, I have to say. I'm going to put it in a workhorse. There's not a lot to think about. If you didn't get the first one, this one will be fine. If you've got the SMA from beforehand, this one's probably not good enough to replace it. Next up is another Ryanair 737-800, and they've been making a few of these as well recently, like they have with EasyJet, which is pleasing, I guess, a lot of people who buy those boring, trashy airlines that we're all forced to fly on nowadays. This one's in the Dreamliner colours. It's EIDCL. It has actually been made historically by Phoenix a long time ago. But there isn't that much in the way of really high quality Ryanair 737s and special schemes floating around. There are a couple of standard scheme ones from MG. They announced one, didn't they, last month, and that was effectively released the one they made before. This one JC hasn't made before, but the mould again, yeah, it's not particularly good, is it? So I'll put it into workhorse, but mainly because I know there's a demand, and this might go some way to satiate that somewhat, but it's not going to be a spectacularly good release because the mould is kind of middling. And the next 737-800 has similar issues. It's China Southern, standard scheme. The reg is B1283. There have been China Southern 738s in this scheme made not that long ago by MG Models, and there is one literally coming out very soon on the Panda mould as well. So is this one going to be better than those? No, certainly is not. And one of them is out at the same time. So yeah, I should put this one down in the gas guzzler, which I'm sure won't bother anyone on the watch video because none of you collect Chinese airliners. The last 737 of the month is a definite improvement though on those because it's a Max 8, and the Max 8 mould from JC is so much better than their NG mould. And this one is EI Foxtrot Yankee Bravo. It's got Tom Crean on the tail. I can't remember who Tom Crean is, and I can't be bothered looking him up. But what does matter is that it has been made before, but only by Aero Classics. So that was on their quite inferior mould, and this one will be significantly better. This is the third JC Wings Norwegian Max 8, and the previous two with Oscar Wilde and in the Unicef colours look really good. And if you're a collector of Scandinavian models, I think that this one is going to be excellent. It looks like a really nicely finished model. The mould's really good, and there hasn't been a good version of it made before. In fact, I'm going to put this one up in Supersonic. I actually really like the scheme as well when they've got actually someone on the tail. It looks good. And yeah, I'll Supersonic this one. I think it's going to be a solid release. Okay, now we've got a couple of 747-400s followed by 3 747-8s. They're not as exciting as perhaps they should be, but they're not a complete waste either. The first one is a China Airlines standard scheme 747-400. The reg is B18215, and I believe this is the last 747-400 that was built. There has been a release on this mould in this scheme before, B18212. And in fact, there may even been, I think there actually has even been a release of this one, B18215 as well, and that one was made for Albatros models in Taiwan, but that would have been very hard to get outside of Taiwan. I'm tempted to put this one in the high flyer. There seems to be an insatiable demand for China Airlines. Maybe that is generous, because actually there has been this other one, B18212, but yeah, I'll put it up there anyway. I don't think anyone's going to be too excited by it. It's certainly not the most exciting thing to do, but it's better than the next release, which is My Cargo Airlines, or Act Air Cargo, as it's written on the side of the aircraft. TCACF. I actually saw one of these when I was in Frankfurt, and the scheme looked better in person, but it's kind of a bit boring. But they've also made TCACG, and again, not that long ago. Both of these 747-100s essentially come in flaps up and flaps down, but they're such lackluster that I don't think it really matters too much. I mean, this one, like I say, been made before. An airline, a cargo airline, it's quite obscure, not particularly useful. So they're willing to make this, but they're not willing to make, say, Air Canada. It doesn't make any sense to me. I'm just going to put this one in the workhorse, but I'm being a bit generous, I feel, because it really is. And now we're into some 747-8s, and it's amazing how many of these they seem to find to constantly make. First one up is a Government of Turkey version, TCTRK, and it is effectively a complete re-release of one they made already with the same reg, 18. So the mould has been slightly tweaked, I think, in terms of the undercarriage, but otherwise it should be exactly the same. Wasn't very interesting first time around. I'm just not excited by government aircraft, so I'm going to put this one into workhorse. And then we've got a Cathay Pacific 747-8 wearing the new colours, but not the very latest version with the Cathay Cargo tiles. This one's got Cathay Pacific Cargo written on the side, and it's an interactive version. Now, they've previously made this livery and aircraft combo, but not on the interactive mould, and I don't think there is an interactive version of this that has been made to date. So how much you're interested in this depends entirely on how interested and excited you are by the interactive mould, which is great for airport layouts, not necessarily so great as a display model in a collection, unless you've got the doors up. But it is reasonably tempting still. I don't have an interactive version of... I've only got one interactive Cathay 747-8, and they've made... This will be the third in different liveries. I am quite tempted. I don't really have anywhere to put it. But it is interesting. It is different. I like the interactive, as I've said before, so I'm willing to give this one benefit down and put this one up into high flying, I think. And the last 747-8 for this month is another one which is actually quite a good selection. It is Global Supply Systems in this British Airways World Cargo scheme, which is always looks good on the 747. And there have been previous versions of this made, but there has not been a version made on this mould before. So there have been two versions on the Phoenix mould, one made by Phoenix and one made by Gemini. And there has been a version on a JC mould, but that's the interactive one. There has not been a standard version of this made before. And so this one probably will be the best of those three previous releases. It'll be better than those. And I do hear from collectors that they wish that when an interactive model is released that they release a standard version of it too. So I think it will please those people who decided they couldn't buy the interactive but still wanted a version of this one. And there hasn't been a lot of them made. The Phoenix mold is, I think, inferior. Yeah, I'm going to put this one into high flyer as well. So join in the Cathay. Now we've got two more Boeings that remain. Neither of them are particularly exciting, which is kind of a theme, I guess, for JC. First one up is Iceland Air Cargo. It's a 767-300 TF-ISH. They have recently released TF-ISP, and Phoenix have released TF-ISH, as I discussed in the most recent Phoenix video. So we're getting a lot of Iceland Air 767s, both cargo and passenger. This one has been made before by Phoenix, this exact version with the magenta tail. I don't think it's going to be substantially better than the Phoenix version before it. It really depends which mold you prefer. Both of them are okay, both of them are not spectacular, but they're both pretty good. So yeah, it's just feeling workhorse to me, to be honest. And the next model after that, the last Boeing, kind of illustrates this workhorsey feel too, in the sense that it's a Japan Airlines 7879 JA862J, just wearing the standard scheme. So this comes flaps up, flaps down as well, but there have been 16 by now 787-9s of Japan Airlines. Yeah, some of them had special colours, but the special colours generally are pretty boring still. One world or some pictures of, you know, random things on the side, but nothing really makes a particularly good special scheme. I have to say that Japan Airlines special schemes generally I find pretty rubbish, much like their livery. So this one's bland, it's been made before. Yes, it's a good mould, but even JC have made one of these previously, let alone the fact that you can get an NG one, which is an even better mould. So yeah, this is workhorse as well. Okay, so that rounds up the Airbus and Boeings. Disappointingly, there are only 2 non-Airbus and Boeing releases in this set that are going to be released anytime soon. And that is a bit disappointing. JC have got this huge backlog of exciting and interesting moulds, and you can see that they're just not using them when you look at what is being put out here. Now, I do think a lot of what is being put out here is old stock from the warehouse, so on and so forth. But so I keep on saying it every month, and how long can you keep on making the same excuses for? What is especially annoying is that there are no Antonovs coming out. They've released this mould, the Antonov 26 and the Antonov 32, and they've not really used them. They've released 2 or 3 models, just one for the 32, I think, and it's like... And JC, this habit of just making moulds and forgetting about them or just not using them, it's just, yeah, it's not great. And so it is disappointing, and it's disappointing just to see the 2 non-Airbus Boeings. What are those? Well, one of them's great, and one of them isn't great. And let's get to the isn't great first. That is Thai Airways International 146300 HSTBM. The reason it isn't great is... but the nose gear is too big, which they've been doing a bit on their 1460s recently, this gigantic nose gear, but also that they've made it before. They made HSTBK, and that wasn't that long ago. They made that last year, or they released it last year anyway. So really, it's just a workhorse. Let's not bother talking about it anymore. But the last model, the most interesting, and arguably close to being the most interesting of this whole release set, is a Bombardier CS100, what is nowadays the A320 100. This one is in the prototype scheme, but with a dark tail, and it's got the future of LCY, which is London City Airport, on the side of it. So it's got those cool titles. It actually looks really good. Now, you can argue about the A320 mold and how good or bad it is, but actually this one looks like it's much better printed than some of the Gemini efforts that I see or have seen with pretty dodgy cockpit. This one actually looks really nicely finished. The pictures maybe are just making it look better than it is, but I think it's looking really nice. And I'm really interested in this CS100 scheme, and I've got one CS100 in prototype colours, but not this kind of bare metal-y kind of scheme, or this unpainted version. And this looks really good. And because the CS100 is now the A220, that makes it a bit more interesting to me too. So actually, I love this one in supersonic. The mould is perhaps not quite a supersonic mould, but it's a good release. It's a lot more interesting than the majority of what is being put out in this set. So that's the second supersonic for this month for me. Okay, that is all the models that they've announced which are going to be released before you're an old person, like me. But there are 3 more models that are announced which are going to be future releases. We should take a look at those. I already mentioned one of them in the previous video for Phoenix because they've announced the same aircraft, and that is the TUI Fly Max 8 wearing these Generations colours with the Habag Lloyd tail DANAH. This should be really nice. As you know, I like the JC Max, so it should be good. Don't know when it's going to be coming out, but it should be really good. I'm going to put it in High Flyer mainly because I just don't know when they're going to release it. It could be ages away, and waiting for this sort of stuff is annoying, but it'll be good. The next up is an Embraer House Colours ERJ 190, but it's a freighter conversion. N986TA is the reg. It looks nice. I'm sure it'll look nice, and that's about all there is to say about it, really. It is reasonably interesting, but again, when's it going to be coming out? And the 190 mould isn't the best mould in the universe, so get up better things in mind. But I'm willing to high fly that one too. I think it will be a really pretty decent model. Not a really decent model, but a pretty decent model, and I wouldn't have a problem with buying it. The last model is probably the best of this trio in the sense that it's unique and it's one of the molds which only they can make. And this one is a real Jordanian E190 E2, JYREC, wearing the new colours of Royal Jordanian. I reviewed the KLM release from Gemini, love the mould. This one should be good. It's not the first time they've announced an E2 for a future release. Like I said, I don't know when they're going to come out, but this one should be really, really good. And I'm willing to put this one up into supersonic. I think this one has a lot of potential, but I just hope it doesn't take 2 or 3 years for it to appear. And that ends the roundup of this bunch of models. I gave JC a bit of slamming last month, I feel, and it was a really boring set. This set still got a lot of dull releases in it, like the Kuwait government A340, China Southern 737, the Dragonair 732, the ACT 747 freighter. These are Thai 146. I mean, these are really dull releases that they've made before. But there is a little bit more oomph with this month's. The Yamato Transport A321, Ibero Jet. These are at least different airlines. It's got a good Norwegian Max. We've got a really nice looking Bombardier house colours. There's some hint of progression there. And even some of the other models which are, you know, fairly standard JC fare, the BA Cargo 7478, the Cathay Pacific 7478. I mean, even those models, they're decent, and I support their release, shall we say, as if they care whether I do or not. So it's an okay month, but it's not spectacular. If you're a European collector, then I imagine you're preferring this to what NG have put out, and we will look at those releases soon. But at the same time, you're probably not overly excited because you know the EasyJet and the Ryanair are both on pretty lackluster molds. So, as I say, swings and roundabouts when it comes to JC. I still have hopes that they're going to be doing more exciting stuff later in the year. We shall see. And stay tuned for those videos. But that's it from now. Hope you've enjoyed this one and find something interesting in this set of JC Wings releases. I'll see you next time. That's goodbye from yesterday's airlines.